Hey, what's up, everyone? My name's Sean Rakowski. I am the Code Mage, and this is my live stream of building a fantasy game console with C Sharp and MonoGame and a bunch of other stuff. So, hope you're having a good morning. Let's get right back to it. So, my machine shut down last night, so I lost everything that I had open. Not lost, but I have to get everything put back into place. Ooh, Visual Studio Update is available. I'm not going to subject y'all to that. So where we landed last night, just to run it here. Trying to work through the main process of, okay, so you go here to new, you click create a game, you say hello, or game name. Sobieski was something I used as a name because it was a game that I wrote for the TI-83 calculator after sitting through European history and in Euro history they had we learned about the Battle of Vienna and how Sobieski fought back the Turkish invasion, or the Ottoman Empire invasion, and the which is actually, I believe it was the inspiration token used for the battle at Helm's Deep, and how the riders of Rohan show up at the kind of last minute in the siege to save everything. So, all right. So, anyways, I entered that in. So the idea here was that I have an ASP.NET Core, or sorry, no, it's not Core anymore. It's just ASP.NET 5, or is it just ASP? I don't know what you call it. It's just ASP.NET now. Anyways, running here in the background, and that starts up as soon as you start the console. I was originally going to have it kick off when you click into edit mode, but I'm going to have that load. I might have to have like a mode later where it's this doesn't include the editor, so that you don't have this console starting up by default, or maybe it kicks up, whatever. But anyways, that opens a browser, or when you click that, it also triggers a browser for now. I think later what I'll have is that'll be a custom ability to launch whatever tool you want to launch into. So people could have a web one, or they could have a desktop one that just talks to it, that passes the URL to it and everything, as a config parameter. So I got lots of ideas churning in my head about what and where to go with that. But basically right now all that happens is that there is a single controller sitting out here that just reads the actively loaded game name and then just spits that back to you. So I think that covers the... So now that that's there, I know I can use this API to trigger changes and get data and split it back and forth. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that portion of it today. What I do want to get to is, so when we launch this thing now, notice that game was, there's a bunch of just random stuff here that I've put into the menu. And I need this to be the actual list of games. So when you go new, create game, it pops up into here. And that when this is empty, it just, it doesn't display anything. I think that's how it was structured when I worked on... Sorry, I'm taking a look really quick at my media again. I just need to copy this so I can get it. Well, you can follow me at Schwani on Twitter. Maybe I'll get the Code Mage set up as a Twitter handle at some point in time. Do you ever scroll through your Twitter feed and just look at all of the... Like, it's just amazing how much stuff I've actually just done randomly. Come to think of it. Okay, here it is. Yeah, so it's just an empty list until you have something in it. And I'll just follow that same standard here. So I have to make it so that this menu, if there's nothing there, it doesn't break, it doesn't display anything, you can't really do anything. It won't break if I press the enter key, all of that stuff. But then when I enter new, create the game, go to that edit screen, I then have to be able to go back to and see that game show up in there. And I think what I might want to try to do is just have like a dummy program that I spit in there for now. So just like a Hello World Python, something that just spits out text to the screen. Maybe. But I need to figure out how the actual data here, that when you create the game, how is it going to be stored in the file system? So I think what I'm going to do is have just the engine itself not handle that, treat it like it's an external component, and it just triggers an interrupt that says, hey, go and I'm giving you the option here to save this thing off to the disk or whatever, or to load up from the disk. So I have to have the concept of like a being able to read in a listing of all of the games that are available, and then I also need to have the ability to save and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I need to work on this morning. So I think what I'm going to do is first I'm going to clear out all of this stuff here. And that's back in core in the root menu. Now, if I don't provide anything here, I'm not sure what will happen yet. We'll see if it just breaks right away. No, it just works. Perfect. But if I go up or down, it definitely gets mad because there's no value in there. So this has to be... There's no menu options, they're just return. So that's that. The other thing is if I am on the menu, or if I press enter here, then it has to oh, there's probably an easier way to do this. Hey Scott, how you doing? What I can do, instead of doing this check for any in there every time, what I'll do is just say if the selected index is less than 0, I'll just set it to -1 if there are no options. Because these aren't dynamic, they aren't going to be dynamic in terms of adding them as you go, at least not right now. So it menu go with the positive case. So if there are, it will be good. There will always be tabs, though, or there should always be tabs. That's not enforced right now, but And this relies on short-circuiting evaluation here to make sure it works, because there was no... sorry, this should be greater than or equal to. If there isn't a selected tab, there's going to be no selected tab, which would cause this to break by normally, but we're short-circuited by the fact that we're checking there's an index first. Okay, so that should make it so that I don't break when I'm doing something on the screen. So you can do left, right, up, down, enter. And nothing's breaking, so good. So that is currently unbreakable in terms of how that's working. Okay. What am I on to next? Oh yeah. So in the menu here, there does need to be menu options, but they need to be based on, data that I pull from the file system. So I'm gonna just create. Call it IO. So I think I'm going to model this very similar to what you would do with sysio, but probably simplified. So I'm going to think of the fact that you can't really get at the system files themselves, at least not yet. Maybe eventually I'll actually rewrite some of these modules that are the system ones in that, but So I want to be doing something like this get files, which would return a list of all of the files in the system, and in this case it would be games, but the games are considered files. So I'd want to have something like this: var files equals api.io get files. And then we have to convert all of those into options or names or whatnot. And I'll have to go off of the file name as the identifier, really, and that is the game name. They're all going to be the same, basically. Files. Let's put that up here. So I'm starting to realize this is where I need to rethink a little bit about how this is structured. So when you select a name, it gives you the index here, but I have to know what the index is in this. This games array actually has to be stored. And it's not so much that so this way when the index is in this case. There's probably an easier way. I should just do this in a simpler, more readable fashion, which is to get the tab index here and then base this off of tab index. So instead of trying to be tricky, we're not tricky. This should come in as -1 if it's not there. And this is that. Game files at select dot next. And again, I kind of want to get rid of these magic numbers and stuff at some point in time, but I will make things cleaner as life progresses here. So I get the game file name, and in this case, what I need to do is run to the game menu. So I really don't need. And I'll have that actually handle the I/O, I think, of pulling in and out the data. In fact, maybe I don't need that file API. Well, I still need to get files, so. So the thing I'm running here is, does this actually take a second parameter? So when I say load game, if I provide nothing, that's a new game, where it just clears it and then doesn't put anything in. Yes, I'm using MonoGame, but mostly just for dumb gamer. Not to call you that, but that's just what your name is. Yeah, I am using MonoGame, but mostly just to do some light key bindings and things like that, and then drawing down here with Sprite Batch. Most of this is actually kind of behind the scenes stuff, but I am using MonoGame, and just very lightly. I might in the future do a set of streams where I build out just a standard game engine on top of MonoGame, which I've done a few times, which is a lot of fun. The main thing I want to try doing is building one where it's a really true entity component system, that's not based on Unity's old entity component system, which is a class-based one. They have a new entity component system that is more pure, where everything is held in small structs and is really powerful. But so yes, MonoGame. If you do have questions about MonoGame or anything that I can try to help answer, let me know. There will probably be some exploration around the audio side of things later on as I go, because audio is something I'm not super familiar with in it, but not today. So where was I at here? Yeah, so what I could do here is do something like API.io. Instead of get files, it would be like read file, and I give it the new file name. Yep, you're welcome. Oops. Are you building anything with MonoGame yourself, or have any questions about it? make this here so you can see it a little easier. Okay, so we read the file, quote unquote, and then pop it in. Gotcha. Yeah. You get a lot more control with MonoGame for sure. But you're right. It's there's a little bit more programming involved. A lot more. You can one thing that might help you is to try to structure things like you would in MonoGame and figure out how you might develop against that. You run into some snags because their stuff is highly optimized, but I've done this like a billion times trying to work through. And there's a lot of people who've done this, so there's a lot of example code out there. I don't know how far I made it with this version, but I have, a long history on this project where I think how I structured it was, and this, or the data and the various updates and things like that, and you would put these onto. Oh, did I disconnect there for a second? I must have. But yeah, I structured it similar to that. And it's really not too complicated to do, to just kind of recreate their engine. I mean, it's a lot of code, but it's, you have a game object, or I think I prefer to call it entity nowadays. I might have some newer versions. Like I said, I've done this a few times over and over again. That has a list of components in it, and then you add and remove components and all that stuff. So there's a fair amount of examples out there that you can look from or look to. So if you're on Twitter, a good resource or person to follow in the MonoGame world who's done stuff like that, who came from a Unity background, I think similar, because he wrote a snake game called Ophidian for Steam, and then he started working on different games, and he used MonoGame, and he was surprised at how much more control he had. I think his name is Manbeard Games. He helped me with some shader code. Couple yeah, Manbeard Snake Games, I guess, but Manbeard Games. He helped me with some shader code that I was trying to learn with MonoGame. Gave me some example code. It was really helpful. So he sometimes puts out content. He might even have a course on MonoGame. I'm not sure. What in the heck is going on? My screen keeps saying, hey, no data, and then coming back in and out. Between excellent condition and no data. So hopefully it's actually working. Let me know if it's not. I might need to adjust how I'm streaming. Boy, that's annoying though. Oop. Hello. Hopefully you cut all of that anyways. Alrighty, so where was I? I was loading the game in here. And apparently that's not going to do anything. I just want to get it so that I can figure this. So going back to the idea here, when I create a program or create a game, One thing I realized I did with this that I shouldn't have done is go directly into the editor here. I need to actually launch create game, or sorry, the game menu with it, and then automatically launch into the edit mode after that. So it's got to be a way that I construct so this is loading. Go to edit game. Really, I want to go to main menu, which is here, which gives you this. And then I need the option to like auto launch edit or something like that. Side. Because really I could want to run or edit. Maybe I'll just give it like a mode, you know. Menu being the default, and then run it. It's more like an initial. Because this gets to be like a stack, is how this is implemented. So when I push on a new mode, I also realize I have to make, when I create game, I really need to pop the game off, or the create menu off, and then load in the game menu. So I'll get that working as well. The one I care about right now is edit. So this wouldn't even actually launch, it will just go directly into like that. Okay, so at launch, you launch the game menu with my stream keeps blipping. I'm not sure why. It says, "Hey, we're not getting any data," and then suddenly it's getting data again. And I hope it's not affecting things. Maybe I'll need to switch to Twitch after all. And just post back videos to YouTube at some point in time. Or use Restream. Could be my internet connection. It's just terrible too. Okay, so this should launch it. But, so what run does is it actually will push the program onto the stack. What I need to do is close myself. And this is going to be I'm going to name this to run programs so they're similar. And what this needs to do is say fc.program. I might need to have a deconstructor at some point, or an option to actually pass. So I might need to have a way to pop off the or sorry, now I'm getting lost. Anyways, okay, so we exit the program. And then we run the program, edit the game, which will then take its place laterally in the stack. Edit game needs to be launched with, or sorry, this is game menu, so when I'm going from create game, I don't want to exit it here, I want to exit on create. Boy, getting lost looking at that stream. Okay, so you create game, you exit the create game program, and then you run the program game menu with the initial game mode of edit, which should cause the exact same behavior where it pops up the edit screen, but when I hit escape while I'm in edit mode, I need to remove that binding from actually killing the program here, which comes default with MonoGame. And I need to have but I do need to copy the escape into this here, so we click escape. within our editor. Should just call it that and be done with it, which should bring you back to the game menu. All right. The other thing that needs to happen, well, I'll check that that's working now. I have to populate that file list. Yep, that's all working. Now when I hit escape, brought me to the game menu. Oh, I never actually implement. Okay, so I still need to create the menu here. Because it's not going to get reinitialized when I exit, so... edit mode. Hit escape, back to the menu. So one of the other things I wanted to do here is if there's only a single tab, so I can't actually choose any other tabs, I don't want to actually render the tab name, because why? Now exit there should be actually exiting, but I'll have to get that working here as well. So I'm going to change the menu API drawing to say to skip this step entirely if there's only a single tab. So there's more than one tab, and I do all of that. Oh, I also only need to up this cursor if I actually did something. So really I should just do this. Alright. That runs. I gotta shut off that browser launching while I'm editing here. I exit. Yeah, no more menu option here. Alright, cool. I'll get this edit and I'll get those things wired up here. Just copy this same. Is that extraneous? Why did I put that there? Oh, I think that's just an expression at first, so that's probably why I was there. Which I don't have. Again, I gotta find a better way to structure that so I'm not using these magic numbers and indices here. This is pretty brittle. So this one would be API.exit program. I wonder if I should just call this sys instead of API. I kind of like that better. Yeah. I'll have to adjust everywhere where I have that written down as sys API, but okay. So exits program should return us to the main menu. This one should launch the editor. So sys.run program new edit game instance. And run I have not figured out yet. What happened to my... Oh crap. 1 second. There it is. Okay. So just for now going to go and set a flag that tells it. So interestingly enough, there's the edit mode thing that I have here in the FC console. So part of it says open editor, but I provided on the in the memory. This is a edit mode, which really is just a trigger to say launch the editor. But I could just abstract this away to be like an interrupt code, and think of it that way, so that when I want to have a file buffer in here is what I need to have, or like a file buffer has a name and then the contents of the file. And then I would set the interrupt code here, and then the MonoGame code would actually read it, or the root code here would read that through, in much the way that this edit mode thing here runs, and says, okay, take what's in the contents of that memory buffer and pop it into an actual file in the file system. But I could do the same thing with edit mode, where it's just it's an interrupt. Now the question is that are those things ever going to, do I ever want to do both of them at the same time in the same execution cycle, where I would need 2 interrupt flags, or maybe I need a array of interrupts. I guess that could be it, as I have a byte of, or a set of interrupt codes, and I can set up to so many of them, and it just keeps a list in memory, and then what they are is really signals back to the main process that I need to do something. So if I wanted to feed out multiple virtual interrupts at the same time, I think that's going to be the eventual direction I go with this. So I'm going to put some notes in here. And I'm going to do the same when I do this, but I'm just going to put a flag in for now for file IO. 1 second. Just gonna respond to my wife here, quick, on something. All right. The interesting thing too is how to get the actual list of files. If I want those to come in the same thing, it's actually going to take 2 cycles to actually get that in. So I can't just say, hey, give me all the files and I'm good to go. I could read them on startup, so that they're just in memory. So in the root menu here, we get the list of game files right here. This is technically then what would take is it would take 1 frame. I would trigger the get files, and then it would have to actually, and this is blocking, so there's no really good way to suspend this and then come back. So I kind of need to make this a synchronous thing. I can't really do the interrupt thing unless I redesign the way that this works, to allow for the concept of like a coroutine or something like that. But then to make it because really what it should be here is like begin get files or start, and then I would, in the update loop here, I would have to have the concept of like a loading type thing, so I don't actually have the menu to start. The menu has to be generated after I would get some initial data in. Although it might be useful to have that sequence conceptually figured out. Now it's only going to take a single frame, so the user's not going to see the loading anyways, but to get the pattern in here is probably a good idea. Yeah. So really what this needs to be like is not like this. Something like begin get files. Now I could have it return basically like, well, it's a simple request. It should return like basically what's like a promise of those files, instead of calling back into it when it's got it. So I mean, what this is kind of like, you would say here, I mean, I could use the task construct that's within .NET, but I don't think that really... I don't think I need to beat it. It's really a say begin if I say... still do this, but I would need to change this type to be something like I don't know if this is really even the correct term, promise, because there's tasks and promises and coroutines and stuff, but I kind of like this idea of promised this. And it's kind of fun to just conceptualize on how the promise is built anyways. And really this read file would have to be the same thing, but I will come back to that. Interestingly enough, that makes it kind of difficult too. Yeah, this makes everything a lot more difficult. But that's good because it's fun. So we would say something like if is loading game files, if we're loading and we're not complete, then we just straight up return here. Do it like this. Otherwise, game files is complete and is loading is done. Here we would have to say now, this technically could complete an error, but I'm going to handle errors later. So that looks like that. And this can really be static. Okay, so that's how we're going to basically do the asynchronicity here. We will start this process by setting a loading flag. So then they're going to be, and then trigger the get files while it's loading on update. If it's not complete, then it's just going to return. Skip this entirely. Otherwise, once it is complete, it's going to take the results, generate the menu, then it will do the update. The only trigger here is I need to have something here. So if is loading, we don't draw the menu. We would do something like sys dot text. I need to rename that. Maybe I'll rename it to like console just to make it simpler. Actually, that would make a lot of sense. So instead of calling this the text API, even though that's kind of what it is, rename this to console API. Yeah, why not? Output at 0, 0, loading. So when I launch this, you should have a flash of loading, and then it flips over to actually. This is gonna break. Why isn't my home key working? What's going on? And there's some nuances to that. I'm just going to automatically resolve it. Actually, what I need to do, you take here, how this works is you take a function that receives a resolve delegate or sets of an action with that comes up with the value that you're looking for. I don't even know what to do with this. What this would be called technically. And then when you get it, take value dot, and you invoke it, passing in a function that's private to this, called resolve, which takes your t. Here. Oh no, this is a, yeah, this is a function that returns an action. No, this is an action that takes an action. T resolve value, and when you get that, then your result is set to value. And is complete. Simple enough. So this is a string. It's this is going to take the file API. Or did I call it file API? Or did I even make one yet? Or is this the IO? This is the IO API. Derp. It needs to take. It needs to take a file buffer. Or it's really the hard disk buffer. Or file system buffer. So this is going to still need the concept of a callback that I have to pass in. Maybe. Because really what would resolve would be is I'm going to pass it into a callback that then is going to be triggered back to me. So I end up doing callbacks anyways, but at least the way that I write it on the other side is a little bit simpler, I think. That's right. So for now I'm just going to treat this like it's empty. I need to think about that more. This needs to be the same thing. Why is it doing the finger? There, that was weird. So I'll figure out that stuff later. But for now, I've got to figure out where this breaks. Okay, so when we load a game, we are currently giving it the file name, and loading happens, is supposed to be read right away, but really what needs to happen is that the game data needs to be read, and then once it's finished reading, then it needs to execute, or to then it needs to actually go into the sys. So this is during the root menu. So it's kind of the same kind of thing. It's loading, but it's doing a different kind of loading. So what I could do here is set it back into loading mode. which would cause the drawing to be the same, but then make it so that it's about file loading. Or I could actually just put this into I could, instead of having these be, you know, within the same program, make a separate independent loader program. So what happens is you enter this, and this could be the same process, or the same thing that's used here, instead of treating this like it's got two states, having each state be their own program. So I could have the program would actually start with a boot program, like this. And on boot, the main thing it's going to be doing is reading the files. Which gets called here. There is no such thing as the is loading anymore. And this promise comes into the boot menu. So public or override initialize. These get removed. This gets copied over to boot. Then this gets, there's no need for that. Well, there is still. I mean, I still need to make the menu. This is going to come in with a string array of elements, files. And then menu will get created here. Game files. All of this complexity goes away. Kind of back where we started. So this loading ends up going into the drawing of the other one. This I have to come back to. We're not done, we return. Otherwise, we do sys.load, run program, rip menu, pass the sys and game files result. And then we change the console to run boot instead of rip menu. It's sys now. Perfect. Okay, so then when you get a game, there's a boot, but this will be called something like file loader or like game loader. Which, okay, one one other thing that has to happen here. When I say this is a stack, I don't mean it's always a stack. Sometimes you do like exit the program and run the next one, so it's like a swap. I guess I could make run program and then like push program or something like that to separate the two, and one implies an exit. I gotta think about how that's going to be because it's hard to keep track of that. Okay, so this comes to root menu, and in this case then, this doesn't actually load the game. What this does is it runs sys.run program, and it's going to run the game loader, passing sys and the game file name. Then here, I could probably put this in the constructor. So this is a promise of byte array for now. Game fila name, not correct. Now I could create a basic loader. Subtype of program. This goes here and it says if game data is complete, return. If it's not complete, return. Otherwise, we have the result in there, so we would do sys.load name would be the file name, and the data would be the game data dot result, and then it would be this program I would need to exit, which, yeah. So order matters here, which is kind of also annoying. And I would need to run program new game menu. With no initial mode. Okay, so that's how all that'll work. Now I just need to fill in the file IO the first thing I need to do is memory needs to have in it a now I say IO like it's really file system. Should be the memory locations between where we store data that goes back and forth between the two. And then I need like a trigger to say to do some sort of action. Again, it's more like an interrupt code, and it maybe should even belong in the file system's own data source. So I might be able to put it all in there. Now the API, sysapi, needs to pass in the fc.mem.filesystem buffer. Okay, now when we get in here, this again is where things are going to get tricky. So got the file system buffer, and it's kind of like what you need to have is you've got to have the trigger go out, but then there has to be some sort of indicator that comes back in. That indicator that comes back in, that has to actually trigger this resolve. So it can't just, it's got to be at like in execution. So it's like the buffer has to know that it needs to call back and do something when it's set. Or this has to be in an update loop itself. Like the promise itself does. So that it can check or run. So promise maybe isn't the correct one here, but what I want to do is something like I don't really like putting this in there. I wanted to just have it be set like a set. And maybe this is something that should be kind of like yeah, how does this get updated is the question. Do APIs need to have their own update cycle? Probably. At least optionally. Right, and that would run here. So at a tick, we would not run program peak at start. And this could then, this could be a function of the API itself. I wouldn't have to store it here, which would be good. because we could think of these APIs as I'm talking about them as really like drivers, I suppose. But so what I'm thinking here is that, where did my APIs actually get constructed? Oh, in sys API. So I would do something like sys.update. And one thing I haven't had yet is a base class for an API. And again, maybe driver is better than API for these. But actually, you know what? I'm going to start down that thought right now. I don't even know if this needs to really be a public thing. But so instead of having console API, this would be your console driver. Input driver. I don't like this name being IO, so I might call it like file system driver. And input driver. And luckily I haven't used, menu driver. Now menu driver, that's really more like an API type thing. The system really doesn't have a menu. I guess it's a core feature, so maybe it's fine. So this is a driver. This is a driver. We'll go with FS instead of IO. So that's similar to the way that they do it in Node, I believe. FS. So file system is a driver. Input driver is a driver. Console driver is a driver. Menu driver is a driver. Catch up. And now these will all have public virtual void update. That does nothing. Now within this one then, what update will do, I want to keep a separate list of these. So I can iterate through them. Should be able to do this. Then we do override update. And we do the updates on those. Okay, so now each driver can update. I think I will start to do a little structuring here. Console driver. Oh yeah, it's not going to take that long. File system driver. Menu driver. Sys driver. Input driver. And move these all to the driver's namespace. There's gonna be a lot to fix. And I'm gonna eventually put all of the input buffers or memory maps into one place too. Actually, I kind of want to get rid of all these specific classes for memory mapping. Okay. We gotta figure out how to get that to go. How to tell Visual Studio, hey, put those in the namespace for me, please, would you? I know it's possible. Just have not been able to do it. What? Okay, good. I am in the clear there. Okay, so each one of these now can be updated. So in the menu driver, or no, the sys driver. Ooh, you know, I could take the menu and get rid of the whole concept of, well, I mean, I could load in the menu initially and then have a promise of result and then not actually have to call the updates and stuff. Ooh, this is good. I think this design is working well, or going to work well. Okay, so on the file system driver, this thing is going to need to have the override of the update, which should be protected. No, never mind. Because the file system has to call it. That's right. It should be internal though. So this kind of almost like needs a so I can set this up like a coroutine type thing where I use a generator for each particular task. And then I just wait till those tasks are completed, and then call the resolve. So if you think about it like this, so you have a private or a list of enumerator, I believe. Oh, these are basically like coroutines or whatever. So what you do is you say coroutines. And you add on something that will call resolve. So, and then what this will do then is it will execute it in the way that you would imagine things would be executed. So what I'll do to start is to take the file system buffer and set a, it's almost like you need to have like an independent read job, because these could technically be run synchronous. Like there could be multiple requests that get pushed out at the same time. So I request that the file gets read, and I have a promise, and while that's actually being done, I also kick off some other thing. So it's kind of like I need to push a particular request and then get back a response from it. But we'll worry about the fact that these could be conflicting later. We'll just say something like, so you'd have like an interrupt table, and it would be like, I don't know, get files. But that does that, which will then trigger some action to do it, and then at some point in time I need to know that that's completed. So it's kind of like message passing, but what I can do here is say, while yeah, this is why it'd be good to have like a table. So you have like a code, and you're given back, or you put that into a specific index in the table, so like an available index. You get then in it, there would be, when it's completed, another bit of data put into this table that says, okay, your result is here. So go and read from this spot in the buffer. And this is how much data you get out of that. And then you go in and read that all out. This is getting closer to kind of like an actual computer system than I was thinking it would be. And then that would cover the... so you think about it like this: public struct interrupt, right? And maybe we make this more general. Public file system interrupt code, just to make it, file system interrupt code. Must be values. Code, and then you'd have some sort of like so a state, basically. So it's maybe you'd have here like a I don't know, like a buffer index or something like that. That starts off at -1. Using that much data for this. So you have like a buffer index. And here then, your interrupt, this becomes like a table. So public file system interrupt array. Let's just say we have 16 possible, or a table of 8 operations, or let's go 16 to start. So you have a table of these different options, and by default they should be all set to well, this would be 0, which shouldn't be the, wouldn't be what we'd want. So, perhaps we need to have like a response code. I mean, it could be an error too. We'll just do now. For now, it's been like okay. So if you imagine this is a table in memory with these things. So what you do is you set the code. That would then trigger on the MonoGame side, or what would be like the device side of the world. They look to say, hey, I want to grab this code, do the operation. When I'm done, I'll set complete. Then I'll set the index of where I put the data and how much data I put in there. And then what'll happen here is somebody will get back a index for the interrupt that they have, and then they can check it. So it'll be like so this would be, and I'm just going to use the 0th now, it would be you define the next available index, but you would go interrupt table dot code at whatever index would be available. Code equals the code. Or this could be just like this. Cheap. So the data. And then you'd return 0. Of course, you'd actually have to look in the table to find a free no-op. So you'd basically take the first no-op file 1. So then back in our file system driver, we would say something like this. Interrupt. Yeah, let's call it index. Right? Now yield return will make this an enumerator, and we can just return and then while, because we know we're not going to get it right away, probably, although we could, so maybe I'll change that later. But so then the next time that the operation is called, now the question is, does this get, I gotta figure out whether that gets executed right away or not, but we would call back to the buffer and say, check our interrupt state, basically. While it's not complete, which we can do like this, and I don't know if I want this to be like an indexing like that, but I'm gonna have to redesign all this memory stuff later anyways. Get a interrupt. And it's not complete. Or I could say so we grab the data out like that. We say if it is complete, we're going to break this loop. Otherwise, this will be real return null. I guess I could do a break here too. I mean, it's done at this point. but I think that'll happen just naturally by hitting the end of the code. So if the interrupt's complete, then what we'd have to do is take the data that's at that point, at that buffer location. This is where it gets into byte arrays and stuff like that, and convert that to a string array. So there has to be like this real format to the data. Like it has to be an actual API or whatever going here. So for now, I'm not going to do that. I'm set up for it, but just to get this working, I'm going to assume that there's just a string array in here, and that the index is instead of being a byte array, it'll be a string of data. And we'll make it, you know, of a certain size, maybe 64. Yeah. Okay. So we do that, and then I'm going to say, so the buffer index will be, so it'll be like, instead of being like the length of the buffer, for now what it's going to be is just the index into the string, and then the length, or how many strings are in that set. So in the case of a file system, I might, you know, this is going to actually have to need a lot more probably. Go like this, get data. I think this is where I can actually use ranges from C#8. To slice. I'm gonna have to be done here soon. My daughter's. So range, start at 2 to be untrue. Can I do the count? I don't want the end index. Well, I suppose I could just calculate the index by saying at the start. And adding the count. So it would be like this, index. What is it? And then the end would be index plus line. Would that be it? That might work. So I'm going to also say once you get the data, it's cleared, or the interrupt table would be cleared. Now technically These aren't copies of the strings, these would be the actual strings, I believe. So this might break if we add concurrent stuff again. But we'll fix that when the time comes.
It's lunchtime for me. My stomach has been like, she's letting me do it, like, she said we can do it early. Only if we come back at 11:55.
Okay.
So
I'll be done here shortly, and I'll come up and make you food. So I'm doing some streaming
if
stuff.
you can feel my feet, they're freezing.
You need to put socks on.
I know. I don't know why I don't.
Yeah, it'll make your feet much warmer.
I have to put 3 pairs a day. Then.
Okay. So I'll just make it so that we reset the interrupt table or something like that. Public void here. Data, I just wanted to go back to the base. Okay. Oh, I do still need this comment in here. Okay. So going back to our driver, what happens is we get the interrupt. If it's complete, then what we're going to do is get the data. I should just make it so you pass the whole interrupt in rather than the components. So this would be the file system buffer dot get data from interrupt dot buffer index. And then resolve with those files. Then I want to clear it. Right. Okay, so that will effectively accomplish what I want. So all I need to do during updates is to go for each coroutine in coroutines cr.update, or sorry, next. And then I would do coroutines.remove all where cr dot can't I say is if there is next, or do I need to use that Boolean value? Well, I could technically just do this. Because what should happen is it'll iterate through all of them. Anytime that it actually physically moves next and returns that, you know, you've reached the end, it'll just remove it. I think this should work. It feels a little dirty, but technically should work. Right? Let's see, it's 11 o'clock. I want to see if I can just get this basic thing working for files. Um, so fc.mem file system buffer. Just expose the table directly for now for convenience. Table. Change this to just be a later. Okay. And I'm just hacking this away right now. This all up later. fsint table dot at I dot complete. That's in table. You know what I have already is. So here I would actually get a list of data, but what I'm going to do for just to get this is I need to go here. So do fc file system buffer, have a get data, a set data. New array of strings. And what that would do, obviously, is set the data in the buffer and in free area, in free memory. Actually, I'll just call this, instead of set data, it would be like complete interrupt. I don't know. I gotta rethink this whole thing. Data at 0 equals, oops. That, so it completes it. Okay, so that should work. I'm gonna just go out on a whim and hope this works. We'll see. It's probably not. I missed something big, didn't I? Oh, stuck on loading. So, did the file system driver, is this getting called? Is the question. It is not. Did this get called? It did. Is this getting called? It is. Oh, you know what? I'm being dumb. This needs to be inverted. I removed it right away because derp. Is that you can move next. Okay. Different error. Text. Why is text coming in null here? So let's go to where the root game menu gets created. Take a look at what data is being passed in there. Guessing that the data is just not coming out of the thing correctly. If it is going to. I stuck in an infinite loop? What's going on here? Okay. Guessing the port wasn't deallocated. $125 strings. Whoa, 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 whoa. Not that many, buddy. Oh, you know what? I calculated the number all wrong. So in that file system memory buffer, the slicer here needs to take the length of the total, or it takes the length of minus the final index, or oh, this is from the end. Can you just do this then? Oh, there we go. Hey, it worked. Ah. So all that crazy stuff worked. And that is where I'm going to call it good for now. Lots of refactoring. Alright, well, thanks for watching. For anyone who has watched or come in and is there now, I don't think there is anyone, but I will call her a day for now. I might be on later, so we'll see. Sorry, I got my controls over here. Ciao!